Today we are here with Robyn, and we're going to be talking about all things systems. One, how systems help reduce stress. Two, when to start a system, how to think about a system properly, as well as why they're so important for the growth of your company, and more importantly, why they actually reduce the stress of your employees, and key factors that systems actually play when hiring employees that want to stick around for a really long time. I'm Dennis.
And I'm Greg.
And this is the More Profit, Less Stress podcast,
where we provide the tools for more profit and less stress in your business now, so you can turn into a valuable asset later. Welcome to the More Profit, Less Stress podcast, here with Dennis and myself, Greg. And our guest today is Robyn Pearson from A Friend Indeed. Some pretty interesting subjects to cover today. Robyn is really good at systems and stuff, so we're excited to talk to her about that. But Robyn, tell us a little bit about A Friend Indeed.
Right. Thank you, Greg. So A Friend Indeed, we help out the family caregiver of aging loved ones. We help them get back their time and personal energy again. Their aging loved one gets a new friend, and everything doesn't have to land on the family's shoulders. We currently visit seniors who live in Airdrie, Alberta, Calgary, Cochrane, Didsbury area, and Red Deer and Innisfail.
If anybody's watching this, and we're going to come back at the end of the podcast and ask you a couple more questions about your service. Any expansion plans in the future? So if people from an area you didn't just list are hearing this, they might go, oh, that's going to apply to me because you're going to this territory.
Yes, we have big plans of expansion. I would like to see this as part of everybody's future when they age. So it's a little bit self-serving in a way, because when I become elderly, and hopefully I do, it's not a privilege for everyone, is I would like to have a well-rounded life at any age. And by having somebody who understands who I am and what is meaningful to me, so that I can still use my abilities and cultivate the interests that I have and new interests, just have a all-around, well-rounded life until I die.
Okay.
So,
Cool.
Sorry, speaking about expansion, first of all, it's taking over the world. Western Canada is what I'd like to start with. So definitely reaching out to other provinces and then going beyond that. Everybody in life has come across businesses that have started out really great. They had a great service, they had a great product, whatever. And then something gets lost when it expands. So I'm very mindful of that, and I'm very cautious, and I really heavily rely on systems, something I enjoy creating and implementing. So then that way we don't have that breakdown of quality, because what we do is pretty darn special, and the feedback we get from our clients and the family members and their loved ones just solidifies that.
You just used the word system. And I love, because I was literally going to ask you the question, what gives you the confidence you can expand? And you answered it before I even asked the question. I love that. And system was at the root of that confidence. Systems, like I think maybe the three of us use the word in a consistent way that we know what we mean. But how would you define system in a business so that, because I think everybody thinks of that word differently probably, right? So how would Robyn Pearson define the word system in a business? What does that mean?
Well, for me, systems is something, an order of activities, and it doesn't have to be rigid, but it's an order of activities that produce a predictable result. Even that result has got some wiggle room or some creativity around that, right? This business that I'm in and this service that we provide is interesting to me because there's a lot of elements that are structured, and yet built into that is the capacity for creativity and exploration, right? There's the boundaries around that system, but inside the friend, that's what we call our companions, our capital F friends, they have some freedom as to the types of activities they do with the senior, based on their profile, of course, which takes into account their interests, their abilities, that sort of a thing. Built into that system is that creativity, is that opportunities for self-exploration and self-expression, which is one of our values.
You have a great skill set on creating systems and you're so focused on it. How do you systemize creativity and the ability for them to adjust on the fly?
There's two important points that I'd like to share, and I really run the risk of when I go down one rabbit hole, the other one's going to completely be forgotten. I have to bring up the ability to recognize a system and build a system was first introduced to me, and that's not really the right word. It was the awareness came from like grade 3, where I remember like a snapshot where I was sitting, where the teacher was, everything. And the teacher had put out to the class an assignment where if somebody came down from Mars and they didn't know how to do something, what I think it was an exercise in writing instructions or something like that, right? And there's the video that you have shown before, right, of how to make a peanut butter sandwich, right? And the communication and the effectiveness of communication. So it kind of ties into that. But it was grade 3 and that was our assignment. And so there was just something that really blossomed with that. I mean, it's a silly thing, but I remember that as if it was yesterday. And I remember looking at the pencil sharpener, at the front of the room, and what are the steps that somebody would, first of all, need to recognize the what is, let alone what do you do with it. So it just peeled back the different layers of, okay, if I'm to write out the beginnings of what could be a system, what do I need to be aware of all of the components, whether it's mechanical or the person, their mindset, what they're wanting to accomplish, all of those different things, right? And then pulling it together. And then, of course, running it through to see how people respond to it. Or is there some steps that, well, of course, that's what you do. Well, maybe that person doesn't know. And so it needs to be fine-tuned. When I started my company 15 years ago, I knew right from the beginning that it was going to be more than just me going out. And I had bigger sights right from the beginning. Before I even had employees, and I thought this was kind of silly, one of those little benchmarks in life that you're going to look back on. I was writing out the new team member handbook when it was just me. And when I would be in situations, I would think to myself, what would I want my future employees? How would I want them not only to act, but what thought process did I want them to work from? Which was so beneficial for later on when I'm, building the systems of who to hire, because not everybody is a fit, right?
What would you define are some key components of a successful system in a business?
I think one of the main drivers that I'm so interested in systems is because I really don't want to be stressed. And the more routine that I can put into place, the better. Some of the systems that we have in place are even from a telephone call coming in, right? I don't know who's calling or what they're asking or their circumstances or anything like that. But some of the systems can include what are some pieces of information I would want to know right away. So that way I understand how to direct the call. If it's an appropriate call for us or if I should refer them to another service. When they are interested in moving forward, I can share with them what they can expect. That's a system. And then I'm simply following through on what I had said, what I had promised. So it's really, I feel it's more of a relationship between what's being said, what's being promised, and then the follow through. And the follow through in such a way that the risk of dropping a ball or forgetting something or missing a details or worse, mixing up people and causing confusion are really minimized, if at all removed. And that reduces stress incredibly. So I think that's where I'm coming from, is I see that
Love it.
as a way of removing the stress before it even has a chance to become something. And as office staff, so currently we have 2 office staff and each one has their roles. They also have been trained in one another's roles as well. So if somebody is sick or goes away on holidays, we all know the larger system and one another's roles. So then that way everything still remains very fluid. So some of the more systems that we have is with hiring. So the recruitment, putting the word out there, hey, we've got an opportunity in this area, attracting the right candidates, meaning that they have the skill set, they have the passion, they have the aptitude and desire, that they are a good fit. And then qualifying that, right? Everybody says that they are wonderful. And as we take a deeper dive, then we can discern who would be a good fit to move forward and who is not, wouldn't be a good fit. So the hiring, then of course we found somebody fantastic. Now we have to train them, having materials in place that they can refer back to. And then, of course, a system of let's test. Have they read the information? Have they, are they practicing what they've learned? How are they doing, and being able to give them the feedback, whether it's in coaching, whether it's kudos, celebrations, that sort of a thing. So I think I'm just really, really close in it, that I don't see it as, oh, gee, we need a system for that. It's how do I want something to be predictable and of high quality, and I don't have to stress about it. I don't have to look over somebody's shoulders, right? Life works well. The more of those, it doesn't mean that we're without problems, because this is a people business, but it sure makes it manageable, and it allows me to see that future growth as being possible. Not, oh, how are we going to do this?
I wanted to recap on some things that I think you touched on that most people seem to forget. And it's actually, I think one of the pillars for why you're probably where you're at right now was, when I'm going into a situation, how do I build this thing from the beginning as though I was hiring somebody to replace me? I don't think very many people take that perspective. I think most people take the perspective of, I will try to fix the train once it's on the track, and you're trying to figure out, how do I build the track before the train leaves the station? I think it's a way better way of thinking about the process. And then you also made a really good point about the fact that your systems help you reduce stress. I think more people get overwhelmed with the idea of even writing the system to begin with. So I think from your perspective, you handle, I would say, a very sensitive area of people's lives, right? You're dealing with loved ones who they can't spend time with, they can't do that kind of stuff with it. I would just assume then that without those systems in place, you'd have absolutely no way to know how people are interacting with those relationships.
So that is, ever so often I get that question from somebody calling in and inquiring, and maybe they're on the fence. Who is this stranger that's going to go and see my loved one? And how do I know that they're actually doing something? Because there is that stigma in this line of work where a companion is hired and they're sitting on their phone or whatever, right? The systems that we do have help the family caregiver know exactly the differences, and I'm going to toot my own horn here, the differences between our companions. And that is when we hear from a family saying, oh, you know what? We went and saw Dad in the care facility, and the nurse, somebody independent from our organization, has commented on how well received his friend is and the difference in his behaviors the rest of that day. We've had feedback of other healthcare aides, again, not in our organization because we're non-medical, but these outsiders, not only recognizing, but even taking the time to voice to the family or to one another or even to the friend, just how much of an impact and benefit that their visits are. We've also had staff say, oh, you know what? There's a visit today. This is when we're going to do X, Y, Z because he's in a happier mood. There's benefits to the care staff. At the end of the day, everybody benefits when needs are being met. Plain and simple.
It's funny you made that comment about, I want to make sure that this person isn't just on their cell phone. I was at the gym the other day watching a guy who's a paid physical trainer, and I'm watching him sit on a bench while this guy's doing reps on his phone, flipping through stuff. And I'm like, your guy's whole form is messed up and you're not even paying attention. Like, you're hired to do this thing, and nothing's going the way it's supposed to. And I'm watching this guy train and I'm thinking, why would you pay this guy big money to be your personal trainer when all he does is stand there or do his own thing or half pay attention or not really be involved? That I can imagine that doing that properly would be a massive concern for somebody hiring a service like yours.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So the built-in systems that we have for the reassurance to the family is after each and every visit, we have visit summaries that are written by the friend, and they capture three things: how the visit went, what did we do together, and if we noticed any changes. So that gets processed, sent to the family, and then they, of course, can distribute it amongst themselves. But it's another indicator what we did. It's not just, oh, it was great, or I sat with him, or whatever. This is details. It's a little story. And that little story paints the picture of that day. And then over time, it paints that larger picture. And we have caught things even before some of the care staff, which is really great. Yeah.
So Robyn, Dennis and I hear all the time from people, my business is different, staff and the team, and it's so hard to find the right people. And they don't do what I say, so I got to shove them out of the way and I have to do it. Those kinds of thoughts. Two questions. One would be, how do you attract people who maybe appreciate and are excited about following the system you're structuring? And then the second question would be, once they're on the team, how do you get them excited about following the system?
The second question, that really isn't too much of an issue, just because of the way that everything is set up for them. As I mentioned before, they have the autonomy within our boundaries. So in our team member handbook, we have a section of who we are and who we are not. You were mentioning, how does another business owner think, how could this work for me? I would put out some of those fundamental questions for them to ask themselves is, if I was in the shoes of an employee, what mindset would I want them to have? What thought process, right? We're after the end result. What thought process would I want that employee to have? And then as a business owner, what indicators need to be in place that employee needs to look at to trigger that thought process, right? If this happens, what should it trigger the thought process to be in order to get the outcome that the business owner ideally is after, right? We're all heading down in that same direction for the desirable result. And with an assortment of different personalities, an assortment of different mindsets, and everybody has, good ideas. And I mean, I come across that ever so often and sometimes I adopt them, wow, I never even thought of that. That's great. New policy, right? And, and everybody gets a chuckle about that. But I would say, starting off from stepping in from the shoes of your new employee, and what does it look like to them? And is there any missing information that if they would have known, that would have changed the course, right? So
it sounds to me like what you're saying is your systems are put in place to teach people not necessarily what to think, but how to think.
Absolutely. So part of part of our training is like we go through our values, and one of them is safety and preventative care, right? Because we're non-medical. And I say each and every time, I say, we have not experienced everything. Seniors, dementia, behaviors, all sorts of personality, all of that. We have not experienced everything. So how would I even think of the idea of having some document inches thick of, oh, gee, this and this and this happens. We need to go to page 47, right? No. That's crazy. So rather kind of come at it from a different approach. We have the different areas in the document, but there is that greater teaching of what our intention is, what our approach is, what our mindset is, and that just helps to fill in those missing pieces so that way we are moving in unison as a company. And if there is some unique thing that comes up that does require a deeper set of instructions, then that just becomes a new section. And it's been working very well over the last 15 years.
And the one other thing you mentioned before too was you encourage your staff, or almost require your staff, to have a statement filled out after each visit, which I often joke that, like, I have a friend of mine in the RCMP who calls it the CYA policy. And I'm like, what's CYA? He goes, it's called cover your ass. Do you actually have a document that's filled out that you can go back and defend what you did? Because there's going to be a time frame that passes between when you did the activity and when we might be checking in on that activity. And that time frame might be 6 months where we got to look back and look at what happened. So by encouraging them to fill it out, it saves somebody once said it's a dull pencil is better than a really sharp memory, because a dull pencil will record better than your mind will. So it sounds like one of the systems you put in place is to make sure that they can protect themselves as well, not just protect the business.
Exactly. And it's also a way of our communicating. So very quickly, if there are any changes with the individual, the family's aware. Yes. And I'm glad that you brought that up, Dennis. And I'm so excited because when we were figuring out our system, we wanted to send out the visit summary, and through a click of the button in our database, once the visit summaries are processed by our operations admin, there is a button with a little heart, and it's called spreading the love. So she clicks that button and then the visit summary goes to the family members. It also comes to me. So she sends anyone that I should have a look at. So anything that's going very well, very fluid, I don't see them. But anything that she thinks, maybe Robyn should be aware of it, right? There's a change or maybe an issue or something, then it gets sent to me. So that works quite well. But early on, when we were figuring out the system, a thought came to mind is, what would be the motivation for the employee to write that document right away? Save it for later or forget to do it or whatever. That is actually tied to their timesheet. So that is their last responsibility when the visit is over, that it can now be considered over. And that's to send in that visit summary. So we don't get missed visit summaries.
From your average business owner's point of view, they're like, well, she probably has the time to do this because she's got a team of people and she doesn't have very much on her plate to do. So she's got lots of time to build this system. I'm not there yet. I'm, running around chasing my tail. I can't do that. As a business owner, you're busy. So how did you take the time to build the system when you're a business owner, you're busy. You're dealing with staff and customers and
few different things. First of all, there was a book that I read long time ago. I read it a number of times, called E-Myth Revisited, and it's all about systems. And I describe it as kind of a crystal ball for your business if you choose to continue the way that you're doing. And not have systems. And so that really impressed upon me the importance of taking the time and writing out, this worked well, this is how I would like it to be repeated, whether it's by myself or whether it's with future employees or contractors or whatever. So built into that is just simply the fact of taking some time aside, that investment in your business. I come from a creative background. I used to be a graphic designer, and that my style is very much form follows fashion. So rather than making real pretty things, everything needed to have a function to it. I think that goes hand in hand with building systems. And so I truly find beauty in building a system where you can sit back and then see it. And I'd love to share my story about building a system for Senior Week event that was several years ago. I was on the committee at the time, and at that time, it was before the pandemic, we would host in Airdrie a luncheon for 350 seniors. So it was a big deal. That one particular year, the announcement ahead of time was that 40 high school students were available to help. My thoughts originally was, oh my God, that's a lot of teenagers, and my assumptions about a lot of teenagers, I was wondering if that was going to be a help or if that was going to be not a help.
It feels like it's not a help.
Very polite.
The top of the head.
We were sitting around the board table, the committee, and the question went out to us, who would like to be in charge of these volunteers? And normally, that's not my forte. And I just felt something in myself and my hand. I was like, my hand went up. And even the speaker, she's like, oh, thank you, Robyn. And I'm like, what did I just do? Yeah. And I was driving home, which is all a 15-minute drive. And from there, my brain was just kind of going, and I just had this little flash of, ants, right? Following in a line and whatever. And because I used to be a graphic designer, I had a drawing program, Corel Draw. So I drew out the floor plans of the place and came up with this strategy. There was a few pain points that I'm sure everybody has experienced who has ever attended a large lunch. The person next to you could be finished your lunch, you're still waiting for your lunch, all sorts of different things can happen. With seniors, they are less likely to tolerate such things, right? We know from past experiences. When I see the floor plan, and I came up with this system of how to utilize these 40 kids for serving not only coffee, but for their lunch. And I drew it out and then presented that to the committee, and they approved it. There was also the, so if you kind of think of like step-by-step approach, right? There was also the consideration of the systems that need to be built to communicate. The imagining 40 kids in a already noisy, exciting place. They're not in school. They're with their friends, supposed to be paying attention. That's not the place for instruction to go out. I utilized, again, those images, the directions, sent that to the teachers, asked the teachers to identify, who are kids that would be good leaders and who would be the followers. So all of that was taken care of ahead of time. Everybody was aware of what their roles were ahead of time. All they did was come in and, you're in section A, or, 1, 2, 3, 4. They went to their quadrant in 15 minutes. 350 seniors were served their lunch.
Wow.
And then, of course, reverse to clean up. And I will note that the day of, everything's all in place and it was all starting to work and lunch was rolling out, and I was standing in the sidelines, and my, little inner voice was, maybe I interfere. And it's like, nope, you put this into place, let it just run. It will be what it will be. And I just slowly walked into the center of the room and looked around, and there was hot meals and coffee and people, talking, and I just retreated back And I don't know if we're allowed to swear or not, but I will. You can beep it out. But I was like, holy shit, like, wow. And that feeling is part of me. So anything in my business that I need to create, I can go back to that feeling. It is right there of when something is working great. And the fact that it was all documented meant that next year, not a problem.
Interesting little thing you kicked in there is it sounds like part of a great system is actually just preparation as well.
Well, the act of preparing helps you to find out where those goalposts are.
No, that's really cool. I think one of the key takeaways of me listening to you going through this was that experience of working with the teenagers really came down to, do you trust the system you build or not? Or do I have to step in and interfere and micromanage everything? And that controlling that impulse to micromanage is actually, I think, an impulse a lot of people have to learn to control. And so in that situation, let's just say you didn't micromanage, but the system itself didn't work the way you would have wanted it to. What do you think you would have changed?
If the system didn't work the way I wanted to, it is naturally going to flush out what needs to change, period. And that's the beauty of the systems, any systems. It's just going to give you feedback. That's all.
So don't take it personally.
Not to take it personally and not to be concerned about, oh, wow, you didn't even think that, like if there is an area that needs to be fleshed out more. And the other thing is, in most cases, people are pretty forgiving when it comes to, there's a system in place. We didn't even think that this was going to happen, right? I'm so sorry. We are making that change so it doesn't happen in the future. It is better received, easier to receive that than, oh, wow, shit happened and that just sucks.
Right.
Right.
It's
Right?
it's the process of thinking of what worked, what didn't work, and what could we do better, versus necessarily attacking an individual person or beating yourself up because the thing that you planned out meticulously didn't follow through the way you were hoping it was going.
Yes. Yeah. And sometimes you can only plan out so much and just have to run it and see what you get, right? Again, getting the feedback. So,
Well, I think that's what most people fail on. They forget that they're, as somebody once told me, he said, you can plan everything you want to, but you can't forget the enemy has a say. Meaning, it's the rest of the world isn't necessarily going to go along with you. So be comfortable with the idea that you can just test something, get the feedback from the thing, and don't get paralyzed by the idea of I have to have everything perfect before I go. I'm allowed to analyze it and fix it on the fly or after the fact.
and I think that can circle around back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier, where in our company, the friend has their boundaries, but they have the autonomy inside as to the activities and the approach and the interactions with the individual. I have said time and time again to our staff, you are hired because of your personality. I'm not looking at robots. I'm not looking at one personality. Each one of them has unique characteristics of their personality. And it would be a shame to cut that away. And I think it would do everybody a disservice. Nobody is going to be happy in their job if they can't be who they are. But if somebody is celebrated for who they are, that makes a world of difference.
So it puts you in a place where the philosophy would be systemize the 20% that matters, but humanize the 80% that follow the system. Let the person still be the person, but make sure the stuff that can't be missed is systemized.
Exactly.
Like in our program, we manage the system and then have the system manage the people, but give them the, like you said, like sports, right? Give them the rules, give them the arena, let them play the game within the arena and use their own unique abilities and characters. And then we have a thing that says when something goes wrong, blame the system first and fix the system, update the system. Back to your point earlier, that's okay when there's mistakes. You said it great. That's an opportunity to update that system. So blame the system first when there's a mistake. If Then you update the system. And if they don't follow the system and the same mistake continues, then you got to implement your training. And if they still don't follow the system, then you got a person problem, where I think a lot of business owners go immediately to the person. Like, that little mistake happened. Oh, staff, and they don't do it like me, and they're not as good as me. And that's wrong. Like, what you're saying is the opposite. It's more what we're talking about. And then I would just add, and I love what you said about when you see a problem, it's a great opportunity to update the systems. We get into that in the program. Like, when something happens, what do I got to do so that doesn't happen again? It's such a powerful question. And I love how you said that. That's fantastic.
There has been a number, countless educational pieces from your program. So I had referenced earlier, long ago, it was E-Myth Revisited. And I highly recommend that to everybody. In your program, Greg, holy smokes, especially for our hiring process. So as I mentioned, we have 2 office staff, and both of them are remote. So we don't have like a separate or a location where everybody comes. Everybody works remotely. Office staff, there's certain qualities that you're needing and availability and all sorts of different things. Often you put an ad out and you're swarmed with all of these applicants, and how do you find the needle in the haystack? You've offered just tremendous advice and tools that we have created our process. So unfortunately, we had an office gal had to leave. She got wooed away by her husband's company, unfortunately. And we needed to replace her with that system that we had created last time and produced incredible results. We were able to then follow that system again, and we had 3 people of which to choose from. And that's a really great problem to have instead of no one.
So what processes or tools do you use to actually record your system? So how do people know how to find them? Is it an online thing? Is it an offline thing? What do you use to track that, record that, make it easy to find?
We have our playbook. We use Microsoft Teams notebook that I've been putting all of our operations procedures into that. And that gets updated on a regular basis. For staff and their training materials, we have our new team member handbook, which is a Word document that gets updated as needed. There is also other reading material available to them. That's all housed in OneDrive. So when somebody is hired, after they've gone through the onboarding, they have access to that folder, and it's their responsibility to return back to it. Notifications are sent out whenever there's an update or something like that. So that way they can take some time and review it or refer back to the training materials as needed. Internally, currently we have a custom database that was built for us and that houses and processes the visit summaries and profiles of everybody.
Robyn, thank you very much for joining. I think it's a subject a lot of people, a lot of business owners know they need, but they want to run away from it because it sounds like a lot of work. Hopefully you lowered that anxiety a bit through your story and get people to want to step up and do that in their business and see the benefit. So we got a couple of fun questions from our podcast producer for both Dennis and I and our guests. It's the first time we're hearing the questions. So first question, what's the one snack or drink you can't live without during a long work day and why? Robyn, we'll let you go first.
That's easy.
A snack that I can't live without. Oh
During a
man,
long
I
work
am going to
day.
have a very boring answer, I tell you. A long work day. A snack. I would say yogurt and pumpkin seeds.
That's an interesting one. Never tried that
That's an
before.
interesting one.
It's really good. There's that combination of little sweet and a little salty, and there's a little crunch to it. Yeah.
That's funny. See, mine's much more bland. It's just coffee.
I'm not a coffee drinker. I've never developed the taste.
See, and I got a whole coffee pot right next to me. I think I go through like 7 or 8 cups a day. It's probably not the best for my adrenal glands, but maybe I should substitute it out with some yogurt and some pumpkin seeds.
Yes.
Then you may have
What
to
about you, Greg?
then you don't have to hit pause and run off to go pee as often.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. I was going to say coffee too, so now I can't use that one. So I'll say water with electrolytes. Seems to keep me more hydrated,
coffee.
feeling less dehydrated. Yeah, coffee. For me, it's coffee. If I don't have that coffee in the morning,
Okay, so
it's like, go ahead, Robyn.
so I have to ask here. You had said a snack. Since when is
Or a drink.
coffee a snack?
Well, it depends how you drink it. Snack or drink. I consider mine a snack because I put heavy whipped cream, MCT oil, and a little bit of hot chocolate mix in it. So it's kind of a snack.
Just got to throw it in the
Wow.
oven and see if you can bake it too.
Right.
See, my only snack is I think my go-to has always been boiled eggs. I'm kind of boring that way. I'll grab 4 or 5 boiled eggs and I'm on my way.
Nice.
Awesome.
Protein and coffee keeps me going. So then what would be your drink, Robyn? Since you pick snack, what would be your drink? Your go-to drink of choice if it's not coffee?
Me?
Yeah.
It is always,
Water?
Water.
always,
Ah,
and
Good
not
one.
even flavored.
Good for
the
you.
discipline you have to have. Good job.
No. So my oldest son just turned 27, and when I was pregnant with him, I had developed gestational diabetes, and I pulled up to my appointment with my Lipton iced tea, whatever. And she said, no, you're going to have to stop drinking that. And I thought, okay. And I never went back.
Good for you, because I would have been all like, who are you to tell me what to do? And I would have kept up with the iced tea.
So if you had a uterus and you had a baby,
Probably a different story.
that was only going to get bigger, it's motivation.
No, commitment. Thanks for listening to the More Profit, Less Stress podcast. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform and leave a comment or review if you're feeling generous. To learn more about us and what we do, check out our website. Until next time, take care.